In prediction markets, people can bet on anything from the silly to the sinister. How did they get so big? When the United States started bombing Iran thousands of miles away behind their screens, people were placing bets. Would the US invade? Would there be a nuclear detonation? Would Iran's supreme leader be ousted or killed? They placed hundreds of millions of dollars of bets, maybe up to $2 billion, according to NBC. This was conflict as financial opportunity or even entertainment. Some supporters of these markets say they make more accurate predictions than politicians, than polls, than the media. Their critics say they're enabling insider trading and encouraging people to bet more money than they can afford to lose. From the BBC, I'm Tristan Redman. Welcome to The Global Story on YouTube.
So I've been looking into this for several months, and I suppose I want to get a sense of why these platforms are used overwhelmingly by young men, or in the first instance, who was using them. And it turns out to be overwhelmingly young men. Just over a quarter of American men aged 18 to 24 say they've used a prediction market in the last month, compared to 14% of the general population, according to a poll by the American Institute of Boys and Men and Ipsos. There's also sort of a lot of circumstantial evidence that young men are the key users here. You know, if you look at Logan Paul and sort of his podcast and the fact that it's sponsored by Polymarket, if you look at sort of forums that are typically used by men, such as on Discourse and on Reddit, having intimate discussions about how to get around geo restrictions, so how you can use these apps in other countries, organic content, you might call it, about it.
You've been speaking, Mitch, haven't you, to some young men in particular who've been using prediction markets. So what have they told you about their experiences?
So we're focusing on just one guy in particular, because I feel like he really helps sell the story. He's a young man, 26-year-old, called Cameron George. He's lives in Utah. He's from Memphis. Big online presence, first of all. He's got 388,000 followers on Instagram. Loves making YouTube videos. Loves making Instagram videos.
This is what crypto trading's about. Look at this view. Oh my God, dude.
Almost all of his videos are about trading, finance, prediction markets, crypto, all of these things. This is what he's very interested in.
Boys, I just hit an absolute slapper on XRP. Entered at 306, went up to 320. I still got two other entries. We're going to be eating.
He's very charismatic when he's talking about these videos, and he certainly sort of seems to present this image of someone who's living this big lifestyle with his lime green sports car and his pictures of himself sort of by hotel pools and his 5 kids. Of his own admission, there's a sort of lifestyle that he's aiming towards. He told me quite candidly he used to stack shelves in Walmart, and now he is a full-time crypto trader. And one of the ways he says that he is able to do that is using prediction markets.
I've been doing this for 5 years going on and been making videos since I was 13. So I've been in the online money making space for quite a bit, but yeah, crypto's really taken over. You know, when 2020 went down and everybody was hiding in their houses, I was buying XRP and a couple other coins, and they've done pretty well over the years.
What kind of things is he betting on prediction markets?
He mostly, as he says, uses prediction markets to track the price of cryptocurrency. So if you go on a prediction market, you can make bets on anything, but you can also see how other people are betting. That's the sort of idea of it, because it looks, if you were to look at the app or the website, it looks like a stock market.
I trade crypto, so I am able to go on this, Polymarket, Kalshi, all the big ones, and you can see exactly what the public's thinking. And it's a little bit different than, putting your opinion out there. I mean, you could post about it all day. You could say you think this, but I feel like it's kind of a unique edge when people are putting their money where their mouth is, whatever world event or whatever price target it is in crypto. You can kind of see what the public is thinking.
He sort of tracks where the sentiment on the prediction market is going to then buy or sell his crypto. But in terms of why you would want to do that, prediction markets are a great way of getting a sense of sentiment, a sense of what people are thinking, a sense of what people are feeling. In his own words, he said, everyone's always had an opinion, but this is the first time in history where people literally put their money where their mouth is.
There's a prediction market for pretty much everything, and it is interesting to see where that money's going.
For him, that's what's kind of eye-opening about it and what's exciting about it. The two biggest ones are Polymarket and Kalshi, but they've existed sort of a long time before that. I mean, there were prediction markets in the US purely for academic purposes in the 80s. We've also had prediction markets in the UK for decades, but we don't call them prediction markets. We call them betting exchanges. But the idea is exactly the same. If you sort of have a market and you put your money where your mouth is, as it were, then it's going to be more accurate than an opinion poll. And for academic purposes, academics found this very interesting. So it was ran sort of within academic circles. But prediction markets, or betting exchanges, as they're known in the UK, take this idea and sort of monetize it. What makes Polymarket and Kalshi and their rivals different is that this realization that you can use prediction markets to get around, for lack of a better phrase, betting restrictions in the US. So in the US, in most states, or in many states, gambling is quite heavily restricted, but prediction markets are not classed as gambling in the US. And so you have this huge demand from American consumers for gambling and for sports betting and for politics betting. And the likes of Polymarket and Kalshi taking advantage of that, because before they existed, essentially, you couldn't really there was no established way for you to make bets on sports or on politics.
Well, Mitch, I mean, that's my preconception of gambling in the United States, is a kind of quite highly regulated, if not completely illegal practice. I think about The Sopranos, and I think about Christopher Moltisanti, Tony Soprano's nephew, running his illegal sports book or his illegal poker games. How did all of this start to change? When did Polymarket and Kalshi erupt onto the scene and somehow ride the wave above these gambling laws?
Of course, they will say they follow the laws that they are under, and they sort of follow the regulations that they are required to in any sort of given jurisdiction. But to answer your question, the demand sort of comes from a rising demand for sports betting, but also a rising demand for politics betting in the US. I suppose that if you wanted to point to a catalyst, a lot of people point to the 2024 election.
America has given us an unprecedented and powerful mandate.
Prediction markets were predicting that Donald Trump would win, and indeed he did, when the polls were predicting that Kamala Harris would win.
We have taken back control of the Senate. Wow, that's good.
That was the first time that people saw. I mean, a lot of it was an advertising campaign as well. You really saw that you could, you can make bets on the election. So this helped to cement the idea that prediction markets are more accurate, but also advertise the fact that you can indeed make political bets using prediction markets. Whereas, as you say, under gambling laws, you cannot gamble on politics. The election of Donald Trump himself was quite helpful. The US Democrats, before Donald Trump was elected, were and remain quite opposed to sort of prediction markets being as free as they are, whereas Donald Trump's administration has had a more lax attitude towards it, and has allowed the Commodities Futures Trading Commission to carry on regulating them, which has allowed them to not be classified as gambling, which is why they can operate in all 50 states.
How much are Polymarket and Kalshi actually worth, and how much is that worth changing?
They are worth, according to their sort of most recent valuations, 22 billion in the case of Kalshi, and 9 billion in the case of Polymarket. That's US dollars. So this is big money, and these are sort of companies that a few years ago barely existed and barely had anything like the sort of numbers of trade that's going on their platforms at the minute.
Well, if that turning point for them was based on bets on politics, how's it expanded since then? Like, what's the full range of things that you can bet on one of these prediction markets?
I mean, you can bet on anything. I think in the UK, sports is where most of the gambling happens, and that's true in the US. But Polymarket and Kalshi have also taken advantage of the fact that if you can run a market on sports, if you can run a market on politics, then you can run a market on anything. So there are markets on when Jesus Christ might return. There are markets on when or if Kim Kardashian might pass the bar. There are markets on when Taylor Swift might get married, or what might get said at the Oscars, or how many times Elon Musk might tweet in a week. So they decide what markets go up and they decide what markets come down. But when I say you can bet on anything that they choose to run a market on, you can bet on anything they choose to run a market on. If they choose to run a market on Kim Kardashian, you can bet on it. If they choose to run a market on anything else, you can bet on it. They don't particularly care who wins or loses. They just want people to bet on their particular market. They take a cut of any bet.
And typically, what would their cut be in terms of percentage?
Oh, tiny, like less than a percent per bet. But where this becomes controversial are the markets on geopolitics. So you also have markets on the Iran war and on the Ukraine war and on the conflict in Gaza as well. Polymarket, for example, make a point of saying that on their geopolitical markets, they don't take any cut. Now, part of this might be in response to sort of controversy surrounding some of those geopolitical markets. But it also begs the question as to why they run those geopolitical markets. And the only benefit for them would therefore be that once again, it gets people on the platform. So you sort of come for the exciting and arguably quite gruesome sort of bets on what might happen in the Iran war, but then you stay for the bets on sports and the bets on sort of celebrity culture and the like.
Okay, explain to me why you wouldn't take a cut on geopolitical bets, because it's considered to be crass or something like that?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because some of this has changed even in the last few years. So it used to be that Kalshi would offer markets on these geopolitical events, but they no longer offer bets on war, terrorism, or assassination. But they did used to offer bets on these sorts of topics. Polymarket has been much more forthright about it. They told the BBC that removing these markets doesn't have any impact on the events themselves, but they did tell us that they no longer charge a fee on those markets.
So we have individuals like Cameron who are placing a relatively small number of bets, but as the market's becoming more sophisticated, how are the habits of the actual users changing?
The short answer is that the vast majority of winners are a very, very small percentage of people who use the market. So one Wall Street Journal analysis found that 67% of profits on Polymarket go to 0.1% of accounts. What that tells you is that while you might have, people like Cameron or sort of what you might call day traders, amateur traders, just sort of having a go at this, thinking it's a bit of fun, the people who are really winning are people who are, as you say, much more sophisticated bettors, making the vast majority of the profits on the platform. I mean, in a way, this is no different from what happens on the stock exchange, in that the stock exchanges, you have day traders, but the sort of real market movements are made by pension funds and hedge funds. But what's different about it is the way that these prediction markets are marketed to young men is quite a fun way to get involved in gambling, but the real money is going towards the hedge funds, who, in the word of one commentator who spoke to, said that they're essentially eating their lunch is what's happening there.
I mean, that statistic you just gave, about 0.1% of accounts winning most of the money. I mean, that is pretty extraordinary. So there is the promise of big dividends, but in fact, really, the money's being concentrated in very few hands. Who are those hands, though?
Well, so some of them are, as we say, very sophisticated. They're using sort of AI bots and sort of teams and everything else to, at least according to the Wall Street Journals and others reporting on this, they're using quite sophisticated teams to make these bets. I suppose, once again, in the same way that a sort of a hedge fund or some other kind of fund might bet on the stock market. So, yeah, it's the professionalization of the industry. But there's also the other side of it, which is growing evidence that some of the people who are winning are insider traders.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that, because it has been making a lot of headlines in recent months. What's actually been happening?
Yeah, so the one of the most high-profile examples, the story starts with the capture of Nicolas Maduro.
A remarkable statement by President Trump on a social media post saying that the US has carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country.
Several suspicious bets were made in the run-up to that. There was a lot of suspicion that this was insider trading, and then earlier this year, a Special Forces soldier, US Special Forces soldier called Gannon Ken Van Dyke, was arrested for an alleged bet that he made where he won $409,000 on Polymarket about the removal of Venezuela's ruler. He pleaded not guilty to the charges, including the use of confidential government information for personal gain. And Polymarket said at the time that insider trading has no place on its platform. But that's the most high-profile example, certainly on Polymarket. Then following on from that, in the run-up to the Iran war, you had several suspicious bets that were made around when the Iran war would start on Polymarket, and several of those accounts won hundreds of thousands of dollars. The US Senator Chris Murphy said at the time that it was insane that people around the Trump administration are profiting from war and death. A White House spokesperson told us President Trump has been crystal clear. While he seeks a strong and profitable stock market for everyone, members of Congress and other government officials should be prohibited from using non-public information for financial benefit.
Do they actually start to have an influence when they become as big as they are on real world markets, say the price of oil or wheat or whatever? Do the prediction markets have the power to start to influence those things as well?
I mean, this is precisely the concern around their geopolitical markets, is that they have the power to influence real world events. This is precisely why the US Special Forces soldier was arrested, is the concern that by making these bets, you could, for example, signal to the Maduro administration that a special operation from the US is coming. That is one of the big concerns around insider trading on these platforms, that in going for a more accurate price, because you have the information, you're sort of suggesting what is very likely to happen, or in the case of Nicolas Maduro, did happen. Those are the sort of the high profile examples. You've got sort of other examples as well. So in February, Kalshi sort of came out itself and said that it caught a few insider traders on its platform. One of them was a gubernatorial candidate, and the other one was the editor of some of Mr. Beast's videos. So they were kicked off of its platform, but there were no legal charges in those cases.
For people who know their way around prediction markets, are these markets deemed to be more susceptible to the possibility of insider trading than other forms of gambling or other forms of stock market trading, or is the risk the same?
It's an interesting question. Certainly, Kalshi made the point to us that insider trading happens on all markets, which is certainly true. To take the example of President Trump's administration once again, there was evidence, and the BBC has written about this extensively, of suspiciously timed bets also on the stock and commodities market in the run-up to certain announcements regarding the Iran war. Once again, the Trump administration has denied this and said that it is opposed to the insider trading within its administration.
Mitch, you've spent some months now deeply ensconced in this whole world. What's it told you about the state of the economy that we live in these days?
Yeah, I think one of the best phrases we came across was from the American Institute of Boys and Men, where they referred to economic nihilism. So this feeling that, there are no jobs available for me. The economy is not going to get better. The world is in a pretty dark place, so I might as well just sort of throw my money on these markets, which sort of almost poke fun at the state of the world. That's the sort of the fear from sort of some people who worry that that young men young men in particular are being attracted to these platforms by, as you say, the manosphere and the sort of the online male culture.
Why are some men so drawn to this? Do we have any sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, another professor we spoke to, Elvira Bolat from the University of Bournemouth, sort of made the point that prediction markets sort of tick all these boxes for sort of young men who might spend a lot of time online. So there's the sort of the finance bro element, there's the sort of meme culture element, there's the cryptocurrency element, there's the straight up gambling element. All of these are sort of big parts of online culture and sort of things, or sort of online male culture and the manosphere, and things that that might be spoken about online within the manosphere, and prediction markets tick all of those boxes. And Polymarket definitely seem aware of this. So there's a meme which we refer to in our piece, which sort of summarizes this all, called monitoring the situation, which is begins as an image of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, standing with a headset, looking extremely muscular in a black t-shirt, and the caption reads, "The masculine urge to monitor the situation." And then this becomes this sort of meme of, that's what you're doing on these prediction markets. You're monitoring the situation. Polymarket lent into this and opened a bar in Washington, D.C. called the Situation Room. So it was sort of the first time, you could almost see what this online space would look like in a physical space in real life. And videos from the event show almost entirely men at this bar. But the point is, Polymarket is aware of the sort of the online culture and the meme culture that surrounds it, and sort of leans into that. And that's evidenced by who it chooses to partner with as well. When it chooses Logan Paul to partner with, it's aware that Logan Paul is a sort of very famous young male YouTuber turned wrestler turned boxer. He sort of hits at sort of all those demographics as well.
Okay, so the marketing spin is of a commanding, masculine, decisive person placing big bets and making a lot of money. But based on what you're telling us today, there's another side to things as well. The possibility that you could lose quite a lot of money. What have you encountered in terms of people who've ended up not quite so well in this?
I suppose Cameron is the main sort of person we spoke to for the story. I mean, of his own admission, his AI bot is down a couple grand, but there are other stories of people losing quite a lot more than that. And in terms of how that contrasts with how this is all advertised, I think it's important to sort of point out at this point that under the Commodities Trading Futures Commission, influencers, when they're speaking about Polymarket and Kalshi or any other prediction markets, do not need to disclose risk, which is one of the critics say is one of the big issues with how these platforms work. They say this sort of helps to normalize this idea of betting big, or going home, because quite simply, when they speak about it on their podcasts or what have you, whether they're paid to or not, they do not have to disclose risk, whereas you would do if you were speaking about gambling.
And where does all this leave Cameron? Is he going to carry on using the markets?
He says that the idea still intrigues him, so he's going to stick with it. But I think he has his eyes sort of fairly open about prediction markets. He made the point that he doesn't feel that certain people should be placing money on what he calls these dumbass bets.
I would describe the Wild West as complete, like zero regulations. Like you could do anything right now. If you wanted to onboard $1 million into a Polymarket account, there's nothing to stop you. And I think a novice coming in needs to understand that, there is nothing stopping any of these, right?
But the phrase he used is that he's numb to it. I suppose he's just sort of accepted in his mind that prediction markets are too big to stop.
You really do see this whole system just gamified, right? It's one of those, it's like devil on your shoulder type things where it's like, yeah, I do think it's extremely useful, but the whole gambling side of, there's so many bets that people are genuinely throwing probably way too much money into in terms of what they're worth.
His story speaks to that phrase that Cohen used, which is economic nihilism. This idea that, sod it, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. I might as well make some money on the way down.
Mitch, thank you so much. It's been really great to talk all this through with you.
No, thank you so much for having me here. It's a really great show, and it's really great to be on.
That was Mitch Labiak, a senior business reporter with us here at the BBC. Thanks for tuning in. The Global Story is also a podcast. We're available every weekday on bbc.com or wherever you listen. See you next time. Cheerio.